Hey everybody, we're back. Three old friends, music never ends. Mike, Dave, back for another one. We're revisiting favorite bands. I think this topic was a little different because we've kind of hit the big boys, so to speak, and now we're kind of entering territory where I don't know if it was our favorites or not favorites, but I guess we all came to an agreement that Rush was our choice. One reason, obviously, is because they're kind of coming back without, obviously, without Neil Peart. Like he's coming back anytime soon. Uh, anyway, they're going to be on tour, so we thought it was a good time to visit Rush. First of all, let me ask you, Dave, what does Rush mean to you? How did it enter your life?
Well, for me, it was probably one of the first hard rock, progressive rock kind of bands that I kind of gravitated to when I was in high school. Um, Probably, I don't know. I liked the energy that they had. They didn't get a lot of well, I should say when I started listening to them, they had just started to take off too. The About that time, um, we're going to get into that, but moving pictures was their biggest thing, and that was right in our senior year of high school kind of thing. And so they were big, they were huge. And then so yeah, they I think they never got the credit that they deserved. I hear that all the time about, well, you either like them or you don't. And there's people that just cannot stand Geddy Lee's voice, that kind of thing. But artistically and musically, they're just way up there on my top of my list for me.
Yeah, I'll get into more of this later because specific songs kind of relate to this, but it was high school for me too. I really, basically the 80s were my rush years, and it really was moving pictures. I mean, Tom Sawyer was everywhere, Limelight, you know, and so it was kind of like the Cars. It was like two bands that all the dudes at my school listened to, and it was those two. And I got into them. Before that, I wasn't really I know them, but we'll get into that. So yeah, same deal. I like I was already into progressive stuff, but this kind of was with more of a rocking edge to it, and it spoke to a lot of stuff I liked, and there was outside of music, some of their themes and things. So, yep.
Yeah, no, Rush is, and I've been thinking about this, considering we were making this, that Rush follows this kind of progressive band, much like Genesis, much like Yes, they go early, they're real prog rockish, and then but they can do some singles here and there. Then they hit it big with, one album and everyone goes crazy, and then they kind of tail off a little here and there. And then they have like a renaissance, so to speak, Rush and they've got the essentials. Got a cult following, and you've got a back catalog of great music, including hits that kind of hit into other markets. The less people who aren't really into music, but obviously know Tom Sawyer and stuff. So and Rush, of course, they had that movie about I Love You Man with Paul Rudd, all about Rush and centered around Rush and stuff. So it's kind of interesting for me. They started like Mike said, but a little earlier with 2112, only because it was kind of one of those albums that was pushed a lot around here. Us, it was not the Cars, but Ted Nugent Rush, only because it just happened Double Live Gonzo and that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, so getting started, I decided to go early. I didn't go early their first album, but their second album, which was their first with Neil Peart, and it was Fly By Night. And coincidentally enough, the song is about him writing about going on the road when he was 18, going out with the band, honing their skills, and it's just a great song. And this is you can tell, as I was saying before, they had the prog rock sounds and and the songs, the long songs, but they also could have these kind of songs, and so you knew that there was talent both ways and which way they were going to go. So I want that to open up the playlist.
Yeah, Fly By Night was one of my favorites, one of the early ones, but it wasn't one that probably I started with because, I was probably like 81, 82. in that time frame, started getting albums and listening to stuff. And so I kind of started with that and then kind of went backwards and went, oh, what's this 2112 thing? Oh, what's this Fly By Night thing? And I had heard the song Fly By Night quite a bit on FM radio in that time period. But then at that point, I finally said, well, I got to go out and get that album. And sure, this is the signature song on that album. And the one that really, again, with Neil Peart in the band and doing that, it's what started making them be a little bit more like, oh, okay, they can get a following, they can have some success, but they still weren't known at that point. It was this was probably the only song off that album that I knew of at the time, just from listening to it on the radio. But it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, this song, like you said, it's off their second album. We didn't put anything from the first album. Working Man was the only one I knew off that. And those two kind of in a way are like a lot more accessible to your average listener than, these longer things. And so early on, like you were saying, I think Jose is there were these songs that you could fit on less than album rock kind of playlists, on the radio. And so I did hear this one a lot, and I liked it. Now going back to the where I got into Rush, I actually knew of Rush back during this time period. There was an older girl down the street who I had a crush on. I was 13, she's probably like 16, and she loved Rush. And one time, and so I'm trying to okay, I better like him to impress her. And I went over one time to, there was never any kind of reciprocation of this crush I had. But went over one time, she's just cranking out one of these early albums, and I'm listening to it, trying to go, yeah, that's great. And I'm like, I don't get this at all. It's like this guy has this high pitched voice, and it's like all this stuff about mystical, and I got judgmental about them. And it's like, which is so hypocritical because I was totally into the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit and stuff, which they referenced in a song, or more than one. So I was kind of not into them at that point. I just didn't get them. And I completely wrote them off. And then in high school came Moving Pictures. Actually, before that, what was it? What was Spirit of the Radio on? Permanent Waves?
Mhm.
That was really where they came to my attention, where I'm like, oh, okay, that's something. But then, yeah, go ahead.
You should have went back to her house with robes and long hair, and tried to woo her that way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it
That
didn't
would have
work.
worked.
It didn't work.
Bring the red star.
Oh,
I wasn't that creative. I was smitten.
oh,
Anyway, so I don't know where she is now. But so anyway, but then yeah, so my first song is off Moving Pictures, and it's one we haven't actually mentioned yet when we were talking about that record, Rib Barchetta. And that song, it totally, then I am like, okay, this is kind of like a science fiction theme, a dystopian future, and this kid's sneaking out and getting borrowing his uncle's old car when you're not supposed to drive anymore, and fleeing the big machine. Sound like something from Tron or something, these big giant things that are, anyway, I thought that was so cool. And that was kind of funny enough where I really got into them. That's kind of where it started for me. So.
right. Yeah. That album, of course, was just all over the place. And of course, Dave and I know we have Tom Topol who could play that album to death and loved it a lot. And so we got to hear this album quite a bit. And I think this is probably my favorite song off this album. I know that's kind of blasphemy, but I always thought it puts you in the car, puts you in the driver's seat. And something I'm sure we'll touch on a little later is something about Rush itself and how music that they could have fun music like this, but they also have in-depth music, music that meant something. So, but this was just one of those fun songs. Again, a little bit of a message, but fun song to really listen to, especially off that album.
Yeah, I can still remember getting into my 1970 piss yellow Carmen Gia Volkswagen with my Pioneer speakers, and I would crank this song up and pretend like I'm like na 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 na, like I'm going up. I think I got it to max of 62 miles an hour in that bad boy. For that, yeah, because it had trouble. Um, but yeah, I love the beat of it and the way the song just it sounds like you're driving. It sounds like you're driving fast. And so I don't think I'd heard a song like that, before. And so the whole album's great, but Red Barchetta is a favorite of mine as well. Um, can't go wrong with anything on that album. From there, then it was my turn to pick my first song, and I went with the Overture, the beginning of 2112, and Temples of Syrinx, which is pretty much played. That's what they did, and they played that on the radio in that combination. That's all you got because you're not going to get all of side one or anything like that. And speaking of my Carmen Gia, I remember jamming to this song too, well before 1983, probably in 1981, 82. So it's probably maybe not have been in my Carmen Gia, it might have been my other first car that I had or whatever. But I do remember this one. I remember my brother really liked this song, and it was one of those ones where he like, hey, you need to check this out. And so again, it was one of my early exposures to Rush was the 2112 song, the album, and then this song in particular, and just the way. Okay, I don't think I'm not sure we got into like too much heavy metal or grunge or punk or anything like that at that time, but for me, Temples of Syrinx was such a fast song that I hadn't heard anything like that before. It was like, you know. Um, and again, I just love the song. I like how it leads into it too with the little, the get this the soft guitar and the meek shall inherit the earth, and then it's like na, 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 na. And everyone who knows the song is doing the you knew the Neil Peart runs because of this song, and that was the first time you went, oh my gosh, there's this guy that's a drummer and he's slaying it. And I think for me, that was my early induction into Rush.
Yeah, this was so I have a habit I've mentioned on here before. Like I get into a band, like an album like Moving Pictures, but then I start going backwards and checking out their older stuff. And I think the second one I got was Permanent Waves, but then after that I got 2112, and then I kind of became fanatical about them for a while. I would just listen to that one side particularly, but the other side shouldn't be neglected either. There's some great stuff on there. But this that side, it was just like I'd play that all the time, a whole album's worth, a whole album side. And it's I think what I liked about it is the little pieces of it, the parts. Like Yes would do this on some songs, quite a few songs with it. It's like a number of songs telling a story, I guess, that stuck together. And it was again, it's that science fiction, again, the dystopian thing, what the whole story behind it. So yeah, that was probably to this day probably my most listened to album, 2112. Oh, I'm sorry.
Right.
Sorry. I want to tell the story. So a lot of dudes were into this in high school, probably some girls too, but it was, truth be told, a lot of guys listened to Rush. And they had a talent show, I think my senior year, and some brave guys got up and played this part of it. And it was like there were some hardcore Rush fans in the audience, and they were merciless. They were booing. It was just like, I thought it was cool that they did it. A friend of mine had like a Rush cover band. I was like, the same show, another band did Should I Stay or Should I Go? And people in the audience were yelling, go, go. So we were brutal in my high school, but I'm glad somebody had the guts to get out there and do that.
Yeah, especially to try to play 2112. I mean, that does take some guts. Because it is so complex. I mean, everything about that whole song is complex. And truth be told, I just put the whole side on just to listen to because, of course, no one's gonna listen to the playlist. But feel free to listen to the first two. But I like listening to the complete. because it's I consider like one of the top five long, prog songs. You know, you got Supper's Ready, you got Close to the Edge, right? You got those kind of songs. And they all fit that kind of same formula. They have this part, this interesting part, it's long, slow. And this, encapsulates it all, especially with the science fiction feel. Ayn Rand, we get into that, the writings of her and stuff like that, and how it influenced Neil Peart to write it. But everything about this whole song is, it's like one of those prog rock masterpiece songs that you never get tired of. So, I just thought, and of course, this was in a time where they were, had to decide, what kind of band are we going to be? And the record companies like, you guys aren't selling enough albums, and you need to buy more hits and stuff like that. So, but and they eventually would, but songs like this were just, like I said, those pinnacle songs, so like Supper's Ready for Genesis. So I did take a step back and went with Hemispheres, which again, you don't find a short song on that or not an instrumental on there because that's what they were doing. That's what they liked doing at that time. But you do have a song called The Trees, which interesting in reading about it. I always thought it was an interesting story, but I always thought it was kind of inner turmoil between the Canadians. But it's just more about after reading up on it now. Neil Peart says, he just saw it in a cartoon and wrote about what came to mind. But obviously, he had an underlying message about it's about unions. It's about entitlement. It's about, well, if you don't give us what we want, it goes to violence. All the messages that still resonate today. So it started to show that they just didn't write science fictiony stuff or weird, trippy instrumentals. That they also had messages to give. So that's why I picked this one.
Well, you guys are picking all of my favorites because this is another one of my ones that I can't say that I like listened to all of Hemispheres and loved it and every part of it. And I mean, I dig them and I respect them or whatever, but probably wasn't one of those ones where I went to often. But I'd go to this song often because I just like the song a lot, and it's short and whatever. But I just like the message of it. How they want more sunlight and they're drowning each other out, and then it picks up pretty hard rock, and after that, and so it has all the elements of a great Rush song, and it's like I keep saying, this is one of my the first like 5 or 6 songs were all just like, oh, that's my favorite, that's my favorite, that's my favorite. So I'm glad that somebody picked that one and put it on because if you didn't, I would have.
Yeah, this is another one of those where it was more accessible for airplay. It's shorter and it really seemed, I don't know about where you guys were, but in Dallas, it was played a lot. And it was also one that, again, when I first heard it, I'm like, what is this like old English sounding guitar or whatever? This doesn't appeal to me. Then at some point, I actually listened to the lyrics. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Particularly when the trees gripe enough, the people, the government or whatever, just cuts them all down. So now they're all equal, which is an interesting thing to. What's the message there? Don't speak up, or get it together, people. There's a number of ways to look at it. So yeah, and I went right up that with another one that I heard on the radio more, Closer to the Heart, which was off of, oh, what was that? Oh, the one
Exit
with,
stage left.
well, that was the live album, but
Oh,
there
okay.
was, it was something of Kings,
Farewell to Kings.
Farewell to Kings. I think that's what it was on.
It
The
is.
studio version. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Um, and yeah, there's not much I can say about that. I always thought it was a nice little song, and I hadn't heard it in a while, so I wanted to put it on here because it's a nice little message. So
Yeah, again, it goes to show you that they could hone their skills if they wanted to write a single. They weren't in that phase. They wanted to write what they wanted to write, but they could show you. And of course, and I've seen in documentaries that the record was like, write more like that, and they're like, no, we want to write this. And so it became a. But of course, and then what kind of fans does it bring in? Obviously the female. Oh, look, Closer to the Heart. I love that.
yeah,
You hate to say it, but it's true. I mean, they're kind of like they're love song, so to speak, however you want to interpret that song. So yeah, you know, it just goes to show you the development of the band.
I'm not sure Geddy Lee could sing a love song, but yeah, it's probably the closest you can get to that. You know, even in this song, it's like he's still using that the high pitched Geddy Lee let you think. But I think I first heard this one off the live one off of Exit Stage Left, and then for me too, it was like they're playing these the bell the whatever they're called those the bells or whatever ding dang dang dang. I'm like they can do that in a rock song. That is way cool. You know, the drummer is like playing these bells. And so anyway, that's what drew me to it the first time I heard it. And again, it had a melody, more of a melody to it than some of the other Rush songs. So it was more airplay friendly and that kind of thing. But yeah, again, one of my favorites as well. Um, from there, I kind of pivoted to I guess it's off Permanent Waves. We had already previously on some other playlists played Spirit of the Radio. So that's another iconic classic Rush song. So if I was going to put that one on again, which we said if we want to play duplicate a song, you're welcome to do so. But we'd already played that off that, so I said, all right, well, the next best thing is their second single or their other single off of that album was Free Will. Between those two songs were their big hits, and so this was a good opportunity to go to that well and put on Free Will. And again, just a classic Rush song, one of my favorites.
Oh yeah. So yeah, this is another I remember when it came out. Again, my friend's band, that was what they one of their signature songs, which is interesting because I don't recall how they handled the guitar because it's just an amazing guitar part in here. It just even I was reading up a little on this preparing for this, and Alex Lifeson said that was probably his most challenging guitar part. And the other thing about this was again I read this. It was kind of like the last of the upper register Geddy Lee things. Like after that, it was kind of like farewell to that last little part of the song. Yeah, he probably hit some high notes later, but it was kind of signaling transitioned into a newer thing. And but I've always I think it's an interesting message. You mentioned Ayn Rand, Jose. That I think that may come into effect here, but I'll let you talk about it if you want or whatever.
Before you,
Go ahead.
before you jump in, I was going to say there was just one line in that song that I always love. It's if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. Just love that line, you know, in a lot of the lyrics and stuff that they had. That's one that I've always gravitated towards. So anyway.
Same here. That's the one that I knew when you said that. I knew that's where you were going.
It makes a lot of sense, and we've all been in that situation. Well, like if you're not going to make a choice, you've just made a choice, you know. Ayn Rand kind of thing. If everybody's special, then nobody's special. Okay, it's just philosophies that they throw out there. Not going to get too deep into that, but yeah. And one of these songs, of course, for us growing up, because it's in our era, is the kind of I choose free will. I choose to do what I want. You know, it's kind of one of those teenage anthems that fit right in with you. You know, you sang along with us. That's right. I choose. Like you knew everything in the world. You were about to conquer it, and little did we know. And that's what makes the song great too. You know, especially on Permanent Waves, we're starting to become more fan friendly, more radio friendly. And this is one of those songs on the album that fits right in there. So yeah, I love that song. We all choose free will, don't we? Until we don't, until someone doesn't choose it for us. So from there, and again, I think I'll go back a little. Rush has always had this kind of optimism to them, and I think that's a part of it. You know, whatever they sing about, they sing a lot about a heavy subject. They always seem to always have some optimism, even in their later years. More so, it's more reflective. And I guess we'll talk about that. But I went with Distant Early Warning. This is the phase where they're starting to use more synthesizers, where it was kind of we got all the way up to Moving Pictures, Rocket, and then Grace Under Pressure came, what's the other one? Subdivisions and
Signals.
what?
Signals.
Signals, right? And so we got started getting more synthesized, more poppy rock, and not many people didn't like that little Rush phase. The hardcores always will, but it's those people who don't listen to music all that much. It kind of fell off for them, and they wanted the heavy, hard rock and Rush. But they were changing, they were evolving, getting older. And Distant Early Warning is just one of those songs about obviously about possible nuclear attack. What do you want to do? What can you do? Uh, the weight is on my shoulders. What am I supposed to do? And it's about, yes, I look out for these things for my kids and Dave's like even grandkids, but I could try to warn them about what might happen, but they don't even care because like we didn't care when we were young, but we're always on the lookout for them. Is how I kind of look at that. So I put that's one of the reasons I think it's just a great song.
Well, we've talked about this before. At what point in our lives in the mid to late 80s, early 90s, we started shifting and doing other things like getting married and having kids. And so really after, you had what was the other one? Power Windows and uh Grace Under Pressure and Signals. After that, I kind of fell off. So from this point on in the playlist, even with the exception of a couple of songs, they're newer ones, and I wasn't really tracking or playing, listening to Rush for that time. Um, Before I get into talking about this song, it's a great song. I love this song. Um, One thing I heard about Rush, you wonder why did Rush endure so long? Why were they together for so long? And I saw some clips or a documentary or something about it. And you think about even like the Beatles and other great bands. The Eagles, they had conflict because of Glenn Frey and Don Henley taking over and the others not getting the credit. Well, early on with Rush, they have just a three-piece band, and there were times where they were writing the songs and going, "All right, hey Neil, you put some lyrics to that, right? Yeah." And then Geddy, you added this, or which part did you add? Who really wrote this song? Who gets credit for the song? And they decided early on, no matter who wrote the song or who penned the lyrics, all three of them were going to take equal credit on every song. So if you look at all of their catalog of songs, it's Geddy Lee, Alex Lifeson, and Neil Peart on every single song. And I think that's one of the things. And they even said, well, the reason why we did that too is because we were friends. We were really, 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 really good friends. And we were not going to let the business aspect of the music industry come between us in any way. And that was one of the things that they decided early on. And I think that helped them to sustain longevity. But again, back to the playlist, Distant Early Warning again. Not much more to say than what Jose said about the synthesizers, and they kind of shifted to a little bit of a new style. But it's one of the favorites on mine too. So anyway, I'm rambling.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, I remember liking this, and when I was at that age, sometimes I thought about stuff a little too much, and I kind of, you know, got into the, emotional aspects of this song and stuff. It's like sometimes I'm kind of a heavy kid up here, and so this song it really it's one of the things I remember about it because there's other songs in it. There's a lot of like Red Sector A. There's some pretty hardcore stuff on this record, but
I think we had that on one of the other
we
playlists.
did. We
Yeah.
did. And it wasn't until years later that I realized it was kind of Geddy Lee talking about his family history and the Holocaust and all that. I had no idea when that came out. I thought it was some science fiction, whatever, but I've already talked about that. So, yeah, I misspoke earlier when Moving Pictures was not the first one that I bought. That was the first one that kind of brought them to my attention, and where I'm like, okay, hey. But I bought Signals, and we don't have a song in here from Signals. We had Subdivisions on a recent playlist. But I kind of look at it and Grace Under Pressure almost as like the same record. Like some bands they have that like they continue on in a thing. And so those two, I think I had on two sides of a cassette and listened to them over and over. And this album, Grace Under Pressure, I saw them that tour. Only got to see them once. I may go see them again, but and it was such a great show. But this is what they were touring on. And leading into my next song, I decided somewhere on here I would like to have a drum solo to show the amazing abilities of Neil Peart. And and so I remember from Exit Stage Left, YYZ. There's a extensive guitar drum solo in there, and he uses everything on this big set he had. And when I saw them in concert, they did the so they probably did more than one solo, but they did a solo in the same part, and so it really brings back the memory. So YYZ, if I'm correct, are the initials, the abbreviation, whatever, for, is it the Toronto airport? It's some
Something
Canadian
like that.
airport. And I think, I may be wrong in this, but I think actually that kind of interesting rhythm at the beginning is Morse for YYZ. But I should have looked at that beforehand. But it's an instrumental song. I always thought it was really cool. Um, so there you go.
Uh, I have to admit, when you put YYZ, I was like, do we need the the instrumental part in it? But then I've come to realize, and this kind of circles back to Dave as well, is another reason that this band stuck together was so great is they all got their chance to shine, and there was no ego. And let's face it, they're all three great musicians, you know. So yes, Neil Peart does stand out for his own reasons, you know, because of course he was kind of more into it. But of course, no slouch, Alex Lifeson is one of the best guitarists out there. And Geddy Lee with his voice and playing the bass and synthesizer. So they were all great musicians working together. And again, to Dave's point, you know, friends working together for a common goal, agreeing on the same kind of musical styles. Because of course, usually bands sometimes like I want to do this instead, or I want to do this. No, they all banded together and practiced. And that's the thing about YYZ, especially. It shows off. Man, they are such a tight band. You know, you have the part at the beginning, then he gives Neil Peart his opportunity, then just cuts right back into them playing together. Just amazing, you know, just shows, you know, how tight they were. I was once told, you know, oh, prog rock, you know, they're so technical, there's no passion there. And I'm thinking, isn't the passion in the perfection and getting it right, getting the exact? And so, you know, and this is one example.
Just to cut in, YYZ is indeed the Toronto airport, and that rhythm that is Morse code for YYZ, and they have it throughout. It's not just the beginning. Anyway,
Is this the one that has like it almost sounds that like Eastern kind of thing in there too, like where he's got that little which was kind of unusual for the time. Yeah, I like it a lot. Glad we got some kind of a drum solo in there. And I had Exit Stage Left, and I played that thing to death as well. Just I loved hearing the live versions of those songs off of it. So the next selection I did was Time Stands Still, and I think so I think I just misquoted a minute ago where I said, you know, I kind of stopped after Grace Under Pressure, Signals, Power Windows, right in there. But I think this one was off the next album after that or whatever. So I didn't have the album or anything, but I remember hearing this song on the radio a lot, Time Stands Still. So it was one of their ones that made some airplay. And that's how I knew the song. Otherwise, I don't think I had the album or anything, but it was probably their late 80s kind of thing. What album was that one off of?
Yeah, I'm looking up here.
I read
oh,
uh,
it's red.
yeah, it's
It's red.
red. The red album.
I can just see it on the thing here. I
I
can
don't
look it
know.
up.
I don't think I put it on my collage at all back there. So, but anyway, it was their probably their single that they released off it. It was the one song I knew from a period of time where I didn't have one of their albums, and So anyway,
Yeah.
Hold Your Fire. Hold Your
Hold it
Fire
down.
is the album.
Yeah.
And it's exactly this. Oh, good, good.
no,
No,
I was
go
just
ahead.
from this point on, these next few songs, wherever we were, I was just looking for let me see if I can find something off Presto or off one of these other newer albums that I didn't know the things on. So anyway, yeah. What were we gonna say, Mike?
Oh,
Your
I was
turn.
gonna go ahead, Dave. Jose.
Your turn.
Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, it was the same for me, Dave. This is kind of the point. I think I bought Power Windows, and I don't think I bought another one of their. I have bought one of their albums since. But I do remember this exactly like you. I remember it on the radio, and I was like, okay, yeah. There's another song that comes in a minute that really got my attention, but I was like, okay, it's a good song. It never really, whatever it was what it was. It was good. The thing that I only realized the other day, I don't know if they have another song that has any female voice on it, but The Time Stands Still is a female voice. And I was always aware of that over the years. And I was like, huh. I looked it up again, researching like last couple of days actually. That's Amy Mann.
Hmm.
And we brought
Oh,
up, yeah, from Till Tuesday. And then she's done a lot of solo stuff. I think I maybe had a Christmas song in our original Christmas playlist she sings on. I would have never thought of that combination. But then I listened to it even today. I was like playing this for Rachel. She's not a big Rush fan, but I was playing it for her. And I'm like, that's Amy Mann. Can you? And she's like, yeah, we can hear it. Okay.
is Annika gonna sing?
What? Who's
Oh, well, Neil Peart never sang, did he? So
That's true. Did Neil Peart ever
I
vocal
don't
at
think so.
Yeah.
Some hardcore fan might know the song out there, I'm sure. But this actually, first of all, that was kind of a formula back right in the 80s, and bring in a woman singer like Peter Gabriel did, like other people did, and but it works on this one. And I don't think it worked on me back when you first heard it, back when the fake came out, but it's become my favorite from now perspective because the song is really good. The song "Time Stands Still." It's like at first you're like, "Oh, it's just the name of the thing," but it's kind of like a declaration, like "Time, stand still, please. Things are passing us by. Things are getting by us." And I love that message. If only we could just stop it. We can't. Time, please stand still. So I thought, and then the woman, Amy Mann, singing, kind of accentuates that, as well. So yeah, it became uh, probably my favorite song on the playlist for someone. Because, like you said, mine is my song next, and the last song. Most of the other songs were, like y'all said, songs that we were looking for in their later catalog because all of us didn't, like I said, didn't keep up, didn't do it. We weren't hardcore Rush. We listened to Rush, but and finding some gems in there, which we'll talk about. I actually took a step back and got Cinderella Man. Space. It's just one of those prog rock songs that I enjoy that has a lot of different moving parts. Excuse me, and it tells a little story about a guy who becomes wealthy, but then wants to help, but is shunned because he wants to become wealthy. One of those weird kind of little songs that prog rock bands used to play, and I think it accentuates their musicianship and the different elements that come to it. So one of the reasons I chose it.
I can't say that I could pick this song out of a lineup. As it came off Farewell to Kings, I know I didn't have that album. Um, so I probably hadn't heard this song or wasn't familiar with it. Um, uh, what's the other one off of Working Man? I knew that one, but not Cinderella Man. Uh, so, but anyway, it was a good tune. I liked it. Can't say much more about it other than it's just one that I wasn't really familiar with.
Yeah, for the rest of the playlist, most of them are kind of new to me. And I knew this record, but I didn't know the song. I too did not have this record. And but yeah, it's an interesting message. That the end, I'm not quite sure. It talks about the character kind of losing his mind, but it
Yeah.
sounds like did he lose his mind because of the search for money? He was also trying to like, share with other people and bring things to them? Is like, did he lose his mind because of corruption? It's just interesting. I like thinking about it. So I'm next. Okay, so we're getting into my next one was Ghost of a Chance, and we're definitely getting the period. I didn't own any of their records, but every once in a while they would have one that I would hear on the radio, that it would really get my attention to be a hook to it or something, and I really liked it. And this is one of those. Is that guitar riff, and then it slows down where he's like, going into, I think we can have a ghost. We're all wandering this earth, and we may just happen to meet up with that person or whatever. And I think it's a really positive message. I always kind of was moved by that. There may be other interpretations, I'm sure, but I not much else to say. I was brought in by the hook of it, and then listened to the lyrics.
Yeah, again, this is one of those later albums. Again, I'm sure all of us went through them, and this is a great song. Again, I go back to them always having this kind of optimistic outlook, as bleak as it can be, as bleak as they can write about stuff, nuclear proliferation or the environment and stuff like that. They always seem to say, that you have a ghost of a chance, you have a chance. And I, again, these songs, they were getting more mature, but it means more to us, I bet now than, of course, even if we were in our 30s or something like that, where, okay, nice song, nice hook, but not really listening to the lyrics. So I like these three songs, Ghost of a Chance, Ray of Lightning, talk about mine, we hold on all together. They all kind of have said the same vibe.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, kind of that the next three or four songs really are all that same. You kind of get lost in it because they're very much the same type of later Rush thing, and I think somebody who is probably a diehard Rush fan would probably go, "Man, you guys don't know what you're talking about. These songs are like really, great and whatever." We just didn't keep following them and listening to them, but because we're able to do these playlists, it gives us an opportunity to explore and listen to some of the newer stuff. And I think a lot of it holds up. Maybe not album to album, and maybe not cover to cover. Like because I listened to several songs, and I'm like, no, no, same. That seems like they just threw that song together. There were a lot of those in there, but I think you all between us three, we kind of picked the ones that kind of stood out from those albums, are the ones we kind of liked, and I think they do stand the scrutiny and can hold up against some of the classic Rush songs if you give them a chance and you listen to them. You got to listen to them three or four or five times though, because if you listen to them one time, you don't always get that vibe. And it's just like that with these other ones. Why do we love Red Barchetta? Because we've heard it 127 times, and you got to give it a listen, and you got to listen to the songs more frequently. So good choice, though, really. Oh, did I go out of turn? No.
No, it's your available
You,
live. Is that you?
yeah,
Okay.
That's you.
that's me.
Where are we on? We were on Ghost of a Chance, right?
Right. Available light.
Oh, okay. So
Oh,
then
did you go out of
that led
turn?
into, and again, this one, I couldn't tell you a lot about the song other than I was just fishing for songs on later albums, and I came across this one, and it's struck a chord with me, so to speak, and made it on the list. I can't say much more specific about it other than I thought it was had the same kind of vibe as Ghost of a Chance and We Hold On and even Force 10.
I'm just going to repeat what you guys say because it's the same deal. I didn't know the song, and it is. It's like it's different ways of saying that it's hard out there, but there's hope. This one, the way I read it, my little knowledge of it is like there's a lot of ways you can look at things. Some of it's dark, but there's light that sheds on stuff that gives you a view that you can then choose how you go. And I think that's if I've got that correct, I think that's another. Yeah, I like all these songs for the same reason. and you touched on it. You hit it on the head there, Jose.
Right. It's a testament to actual band and what they were writing. And again, they're obviously getting older. They've had to deal with their own adversities as well. And I think they relay them in these last couple albums. Let's face it, I'm sure they could do a heavy hard rock album again if they really wanted to. Like, hey, we need to go, do something or try to do something that's they've already reached the pinnacle. They played, people went to go see. They had the cult following. So for them to just if the fans like this music, then they like this music like any hardcore fan base. We put out, they're probably going to like it because they like us. I'm guilty of it. You know, you have certain groups that you listen to, whatever they put out, that's going to be good. And you like it even better when it's good music and it's positive or it rings true to you. And I think these songs all kind of together exemplify that. I went with We Hold On. I was like you guys, went fishing. I found this album, I think Snakes and Bones or something like that. And what you find out is there was like 5 or 6 songs on that album that I could have easily used that I would have been comfortable with. I thought that whole album was a lot more mellower, a lot more acoustic guitar playing, and just a lot of good songs on there with great messages. So again, this playlist, we're self-indulgent playlist for ourselves for finding new music and enjoying that and finding even Rush, who we think, whoa, Rush, we're Rush experts. We're not even close, but we get to experience it that much more, finding these kind of songs. And that was mine. We Hold On. Again, another message of, hey, things can get tough, but you need to keep persevering. It's funny how they have it in all 3 of those songs, so to speak. So it's funny that we all kind of came to the conclusion with those. So, excuse me. Anyway, that's why I chose We Hold On.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of divert instead of talking about the song, which again, I probably can't add anything more to it other that we've kind of said or whatever, but just a couple of Rush facts or things that thought about. So, so one of the things when I started listening to Rush and they were pretty, heavy and fast and progressive and everything. I heard a lot of backlash about, like, especially with the 2112, that this is the whole Ayn Rand thing and you know the writing of that and whatever. But that there were people that were like, oh no, they're like satanic. It's that red star, is like a Satan thing, right? And I heard all that, a lot of that kind of stuff, and none of that ever panned out to be true. But it was funny at the time that people were, especially the older generation, my parents and others were like, "You're listening to Rush," like it's some kind. And I think even somebody said that Rush stood for rulers under Satan's hand. Did you ever hear that? Did you ever hear that? Rulers under Satan's hand.
I'm
Really?
sure it's out there.
Because they write a few lyrics that are kind of trippy and everything, you're gonna say that they're devil worshippers or something like that, which is again is farthest from the truth. Um,
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I mean, that star, it's not even like a pentagram like used in it. It's like it's facing the wrong way. It's like an upside down star, right? I thought that was kind of silly too. But and then I don't know if you remember. Oh, you done, Dave?
yeah,
Another one I heard was Kiss, which allegedly was Knights in Satanic Service, which I don't believe it was, but anyway, whatever. People are gonna do what they're gonna do. Okay, so We Hold On. I have nothing new to add. It's same deal. It's like not just the last 3, but also the next song. They really are all that, you know, against the odds. We're gonna persevere. There's it's like the human condition. There's so many challenges out there that you could easily. People are destroyed all the time. Bad things happen, but they don't always. The humanity, despite plagues and all kinds of great stuff even going on these days. It still continues. And within that, the humanity within us, there's still a capacity for love, not everybody is all about money, it's like I'm not gonna Pollyanna, but it's still, and that's great. That's great. And I think that is kind of a real testament. It feeds through all their stuff, but especially these songs later. And the song that I chose next was Force 10. And it was again one of those that I remember from back in the day that I liked the way the song sounded before anything else. It has a kind of this driving part, and I don't know, I didn't, but I always assumed it was some kind of like military, like Force 10 from Navarone. I know it
I
wasn't
was
that, but
thinking that same
some
thing.
kind of like something like that. It has nothing to do with that. If I understand correctly from later listening to it, it's more, again, it's like the challenges it's a storm, that we're going against, a hurricane, whatever. And so,
Right. Fits it right in with the last four songs, which again are about persevering, and whatever the storms of life, attack you. That's what, you have to endure, and people have for millions of years. But it's always kind of nice to hear that you still have to, hear about it. It's easy to give up nowadays, especially with everything that goes on, natural disasters, any kind of really stuff that happens to you personally, it's storms of life we all have to endure. So yeah, it's amazing that we had all those four songs and songs that we picked from their newer, so to speak, catalog that came to mind, and none of the other ones like some hard rock and songs stuck, which of course would have been interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Force 10 from Navrunk. That's one of the first things I thought about too. I
First
don't
of all, that
know.
movie's horrible.
I know.
Harrison Ford, though, man, Harrison Ford,
And
right?
Barbara Bach, don't forget her.
Mrs. Ringo Starr.
So yeah, I can't add much more. One other Rush factoid I think that I heard, where Geddy Lee, how did he get his name Geddy? So I heard that, you talk about the Yiddish and the um, Jewish background and stuff like that. So his mother couldn't. His name was actually Gary. So it's Gary Lee, but that wouldn't have been as exciting. But the way his mom pronounced it was Getty, 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 like Jerry, but Getty. And then so it kind of stuck, and that's how he got the name Getty. I don't know. You probably both heard that or whatever.
I read it the other day.
So maybe our listeners hadn't heard it, but that's how he got the name Getty. Is his name's Gary, but his mother pronounced it Getty. So anyway, that's about all I can add to that. So then at that point, so here we're going with all these newer songs, and we're trying to go. And I said, all right, I'm bringing up the rear. I got to come up with something, even if we played multiple songs on one album. So I thought about Limelight was maybe one I was going to put, and then I thought, no, I got to go with the hardest rock. Let's go with the Tom Sawyer. Put that at the end of this playlist. It's the one we all recognize and we all know, and kind of bookend the playlist. So not much more I can say about it other than just everyone knew this song, and it got so much airplay and was so popular at the time. And even now today, I think with sporting events and other things, you hear this song played, and again, it's one of their anthems.
Yeah. So I mean, I kind of referenced this earlier. Tom Sawyer and Limelight. That was everywhere when I was maybe junior in high school, freshman, and so I knew these very well, and I liked them both. I But it was one of those things where they got played so much that I kind of grew bored with them, and it wasn't 2 years later I kind of got back into them. Limelight, I'm gonna do a little. I don't have anything else to say about that. So Limelight, it was that one. I somehow discovered this that there's a line from Shakespeare in there, and I was like, that all the world's a stage. At the beginning of I don't know if it's a soliloquy or whatever, but it's in As You Like It, and by Shakespeare, and So when somebody told me that, I think, and I'm like, really? Wow, that's impressive. I think people will think I'm cool if I know that. And so then I went over to like the school library, but I didn't know what, nobody knew what it was from, but just there was, so I'm going through all this stuff about Shakespeare and finally I asked the librarian and she's like, oh, that's from, and I looked up, I'm like, there it is. And they used it there. I think their first live album was uh, before this song came out. All the World's a Stage was their first live album years before. So this has nothing to do with Tom Sawyer, but it was the same time in my life.
I find it amusing that Mike thinks finding out about Shakespeare is cool in the middle school, high school. Like, yeah, that's probably not cool.
I don't know. I was a weird kid. What do you want?
Anyway, obviously Tom Sawyer, it had to be on here. I mean, as much as you can agree or disagree among fans, it is their biggest hit. Everyone knows it's been used in movies. It's just the song that really put them over the top, and it was one of those things again where older fan now you have a whole onslaught of newer fans coming to see Rush because of this song, while before you had all these prog rock guys like where are all these people coming from? So but it broke them through and it really established them again. I think it took them a long time to get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for whatever reason, which was kind of ridiculous, but it happens. And so in the end I thought we did a good job of kind of finding newer songs, older songs, hits, and staples. Any final thoughts on Rush, Mike?
Well, we talked about going into the newer stuff. There was so much of the older stuff we just did not, more obscure, I guess, for people who didn't listen to him that I loved, like Jacob's Ladder or what was that one? The Witch Hunt,
Uh,
Xanadu, things like that. The one with the Spanish guitar, I forget what it's called at the beginning. That it's like, yeah, and a lot of them are longer, so it's kind of hard to put them on here. So I think the flow was great. I just want to acknowledge those other songs.
Yeah, I think it was good. Like I said, we started off with the classics, the ones we know. We get ripping through those, and then we put on some new stuff, so it gives a fresh thing. And then ending it with Tom Sawyer, I think was good. We didn't talk much about the two things above me here: the stoplight there with Rush, the over 50 something tour. Is that what it's called for
uh,
2026? And again, replacing Neil Peart with Annika. I think it should be interesting to see what they do, whether they produce any new music or whether they're just gonna tour and play the old things. Um, but yeah, we talked about maybe trying to go to the show or whatever, but they definitely have sold out for the dollar because they're those ticket prices are super high, and I'm sure they'll sell out. Because they had a great following, and there's probably a whole new generation of people too that go, "What's this Rush thing, man? I got to go see that." Even younger kids and whatnot. I don't think it's going to be all 50, 60-year-old people in the audience. They'll have others. So it'll be interesting to see the tour and whatnot. And I think good for them, to at least have whether this is a farewell tour or there will be others after that, I'm not sure. But just the fact that they decided, you know what, in honor of their friend Neil Peart, that they decided to go ahead and come back. At first, it's like we'll never play again, right? We can't ever replace him. We know that. And then Alex and Geddy were such friends. They just started hanging out together and jamming and playing some of the old stuff, and then they kind of got the bug and went, man, maybe we should play these songs again that we love, and that's how they decided to find a drummer and go back on tour.
yeah, I don't think I was talking to my brother. I obviously I don't think it's a cash grab just for them. Sure, they're going to make lots of money, but I think they have plenty of it as it is. I think it's like Dave said, these are great musicians who aren't getting allowed to play their music. I mean, it's been over a decade now that they haven't played these songs, and they're musicians till the bitter end. That doesn't go away. So I don't mind it. I don't know if I'll go. Like you said, it's pricey, but there's a lot of other concerts that I might want to go see that I can. So but overall, Rush will always have a soft spot on all of our hearts. I'm sure. Not speaking for everyone, but and so it was a fun playlist, and I'm sure we'll be bringing some more. It was this number 61 now,
This was 60.
60. So from there on, we'll keep on going. So everyone, have a good day.